prayers by night.
They become a wolf.
Pain blooms.
Oh yeah, that actually works. Cool. All right, sure would. Hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of That's Lunacy, a podcast where we talk about werewolf movies. And I had to haul on my headphones real quick because I realized that's the thing I forgot to do, and it will make this whole process so much better.
Everyone's got to have headphones on. We have to match. It's like our team uniform.
Well, Josh isn't wearing a toque this time. He was like,
I forgot the team uniform.
Well,
I got my toque. So
there you go, Josh. There you go. We're starting this one off really strong. It's just like, welcome to this, like, a really cool intro, and then it's just like a minute of us joking about toques. It's great.
hold on, we all have to get dressed.
We couldn't have done this beforehand because that would have been just too easy to manage. All right, there you go, Josh.
Okay, so now we're all in uniform now. I think we should start again. Just roll the intro again. And this time, don't do any music. I have a secondary pitch for what our opening should be.
Okay, all right, here we go. Ready? Here's okay. Just like for anybody who's listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, we are going to play a video and Mike is going to talk about it. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. Oh, and I'm horny like the wolf. Wow! Bats. What do you think?
I think we're going to go with the other one.
All right. Well,
until we get a
I don't know. I think they were both strong. I think they were.
I'm never going to
strong.
stop doing it. So
until we get a cease and desist letter for the other intro, we're going to keep using this one. Hey everybody, and welcome this far in. It's been a couple minutes, and we are at episode 2 of That's Lunacy, a werewolf movie podcast where we watch werewolf movies and talk about them in a hope to learn about how to make the best werewolf movie possible. And last week for episode 1, we watched Wolf by Mike Nichols. It is a great, I think it's a good film. I think it's a good film and we enjoyed it. And there was a lot to take away from it. There was some bad stuff, sure. But overall, it was like a fun werewolf movie with Jack Nicholson doing a bunch of great stuff. This time we thought we'd go in a bit of a different direction. And Mike specifically asked me to help, like, that if we could pick a movie that was bad.
Yeah. And you killed me. You
and I believe rose to the challenge.
You certainly did.
We watched.
I want to go back. I want you to go back and listen to the first episode. Everything that I said about Wolf that was not 100% positive, disregard it entirely. They gave us knowing how bad it could have been.
You want to start this episode by apologizing to the last movie?
Yes, I'm so sorry I said anything bad about Wolf. I made fun of some stuff I shouldn't have. They did a wonderful job, an incredible service. What a watchable movie. And I did not know that was going to be like the benchmark for what I wanted.
Well, that's it. That's where Full Moon High takes you. So Full Moon High, what? Oh man. So here's my backstory on Full Moon High, because a lot of these movies I have like a kind of a pre-existing relationship with, let's say. So with Full Moon High, it's a movie that I caught a little bit of when I was a kid on like TV before there was like on demand. So it was just like it came on for a second. I was like, oh, this kind of has like a Teen Wolf thing to it. And then like just because of whatever, I wasn't able to just sit down and watch it. So I was excited because I thought it was a movie like Teen Wolf. And then there was just kind of like lore behind it. I would see it written about in other werewolf books and things and all kinds of stuff. And so like it kind of got hyped up a certain way in my head. I ended up getting this shirt that I'm wearing right now from Local Boogeyman that has artwork inspired by the cover of Full Moon High. And then when Shout Factory released it on Blu-ray a couple years ago, I like jumped at it and got it. And that was the first time I actually watched it. And then I went, oh my God, what have I done with my life? Like having this movie on some sort of like pedestal, having not actually seen it. And then I watched it. It was like so much worse than I imagined it could be.
I listened to everything you just said, and all I could think is why? Why did anyone write about this movie and then hype it up? Why did anyone make merchandise with featuring artwork inspired by this film? I am so mad that I think this is the finale of this podcast. I don't know that I can do another one.
We quit yesterday. We did officially quit. We stopped
the
the podcast.
guys wrote me while they were watching the movie each, and like I think you guys were watching pretty much at the same time, and we're both like, "What have you done?" Like, no. Whereas with me, I rewatched this movie this morning. Like we're recording at like noon, and I got up. It's the day after St. Patrick's Day. It is the 18th of March. I woke up hungover and sat down and instantly like put myself through this movie.
What a miserable way to start a day.
Oh my God. It can only go up from here though. Like that's the good thing is that my day can only get better after starting it with this movie. One thing I do like about this movie is the beginning. And I mean like literally like it comes up on black and then there's like you hear like kind of bestial like grunting and snarling and it sounds like a werewolf and it kind of gets you in that kind of headspace, and then it cuts and it's like a high school football game and you're like, oh, it's like the duality of man, and and then from there it just goes downhill. Like the best part of this movie is the black screen at the top, and then from there it just slowly starts, not even that slowly starts, like just getting worse and worse and worse. Oh man.
Yeah, off the top it did surprise me.
It was one good sound effect. And what was weird was after that, all the other sound effects for werewolves were like it was like cat sounds. It sounded like a jaguar or something.
Yeah, the jaguar in Transylvania really got him.
But you know, of course, this movie came out in 1981, which is considered a benchmark year for werewolf film. Like Howling, American Werewolf in London, Wolfen, like all these movies came out, and they were considered like, you know, the new cycle of the werewolf. It kicked off a pattern of werewolf movies and monster movies that kind of like predominated the 80s. But this one also kind of right in the pack. Holy shit.
I'm glad you mentioned that it came out in 81 because like I was watching this and I kind of thought what else came out this year, because what were people watching in 81, because this is remarkably bad. So yeah. Porky's came out in 81.
Yeah.
An American Werewolf in London came out in 81, and Mel Brooks's History of the World came out in 81. And I feel like it's like some producer somewhere said to a screenwriter, hey, you know, I really like these like kind of Mel Brooks spoof movies, and that werewolf movie's doing good over there. Can you throw in a little Porky's and just like make that movie? And someone said, sure, how long do I have? And they said, I'll give you 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And this is what we got. This is just,
and like there's like such a weird, like the thing that kills me about this movie is that on top of like all of just the like bad cringy jokes, there's a bunch of weird like homophobic and just weird rape culture-y kind of things within this movie that are just like really, it's a lot to unpack. But then there's like this really like even beyond all that, there's just such a weird political theme through the movie where, I mean, it starts off during like kind of the late 50s, early 60s, height of the Cold War. And Ed McMahon is this like really intense military guy. He's a colonel, and he's like, you know, the whole thing is him going to Transylvania to get microfilm from communists. And it's like a whole thing. And even like the time lapse in the movie is told by like replacing pictures of the president. Like that's how they show you the passage of time between like the late 50s and early 80s when the movie kind of timeline takes place and stuff. And like, yeah, there's just so much political shit in this with like, you know, he retreats like, you know, after the infection from, you know, the communist region kind of starts crashing through America and literally is in his house. He retreats to his bomb shelter. Like there's a whole bunch of that stuff that if you want to try to be really academic and intellectual about this movie, you could really get into. But this movie does not deserve that conversation.
Oh my God, no. I was really worried you were going to dive into that.
That's it. I kind of want to go over it. I also find it really weird at the height of that. There's the thing where he's in the bomb shelter and Ed McMahon is talking to the picture of Joe McCarthy. And he says something like, Joe McCarthy, they could have listened to you back then when they had a chance. And I'm kind of like, did Ed McMahon forget that this part of the movie is supposed to be taking place in the 50s? Like, he's talking to Joe McCarthy as though Joe McCarthy was in fact 25 years prior to the movie. But at this point in the movie, it's supposed to be like contemporary. It's just so weird, man. Like, and this movie also has, I don't know what that was.
Sounds like a train.
This movie also has the mash effect. It's a thing that I refer to in TV and movies from the 70s and 80s, which is a thing where stuff is supposed to be set in the 50s, but they didn't bother to like get anyone a haircut.
Yeah.
So like everybody is like looks and acts as though it's the 70s, but you're told it's the 50s through like music and stuff. What is going on with the sound here? It's so weird. Like I'm hearing like
I think that's me. I'm by a window.
well, there you go, Josh. It's just like a big truck or something just went by. It's very intense.
Yeah,
It's like
a big truck just went by. I was thinking, should I do this in a different part of the house? No, you should do it in the part of the house with the good light. But the sound might not be great. Yeah, but lighting's more important for a podcast.
Yeah.
but yeah, anyway. But what was I don't even remember what I was talking about. Something about this movie.
Well, Josh, I'm glad you brought up the Mel Brooks thing, because that was one of the notes that I had right away, where it was like, let's do kind of like a young Frankenstein feel, like a Mel Brooks style movie where it's just like joke, except we're not funny and we're perverts. We've never made a movie before and you hate us. That's the zero charm. We're not going to have any charm in this thing.
But we'll get Kenneth Mars, so you think it's Mel Brooks stuff. I actually, one of my notes on this movie is straight up, what people in this movie find funny isn't funny. And I think that was from the point where all the football players were dancing around pretending to play violins because he seemed to have a head injury.
There were too many times that a lot of people were singing. Like I'm thinking about specifically the end of the movie too, which was just like, it was like they were just taking a drill after having slowly drilled into my brain for an hour and 31 minutes.
Yeah.
And then just turned the drill up to 1,000 when they sang not one, but 2 songs.
Yeah. And I mean, I got to say, Bill Kirchenbauer, voice of an angel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think at the end of it, it was just like, well, you know, Bill can really hit those high notes. He's got a great falsetto. Let's do a Good Night, Sweetheart ripoff that's all about a full moon high school. Because that's one of the things that really sticks out to me in this movie is that the school is called Full Moon High. And why? Like, like this guy gets attacked by a werewolf. He gets attacked by the werewolf. He just before that, a lady in Transylvania who we're kind of led to believe is like a gypsy, tells him, is a fortune teller, but she's like dressed really nice and she's in a really fancy restaurant. And then she tells him the whole like reading his palm stuff. Josh is going for a walk to try to get away from the window sound. But like, trying to do all this stuff. And then, like there's some things where it's like, oh, maybe he was fated for this. And that's kind of, but again, I think it's just like, let's call it, but like, there's no reason that the school needs to be called Full Moon High other than like, it's the way they want to sell it. It's like a werewolf movie set in a high school. And it's not even really that set in a high school. And nobody in it is in high school.
Oh my God. That was the first thing I wrote was, God damn it. Because I also didn't realize it was the 50s right off the bat because of the hair. So I was like, Jesus Christ, high school students in the 80s were old.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I guess like to some degree, it's I assume that that was a choice that was made. So that passage of time of the 25 years, it's like everybody's playing the same character. So they cast Adam Arkin. He plays Tony, and he is 25 years old. He's actually 25 when the movie was made.
No.
He might have been 40, but he was actually 25.
Yeah,
but he's supposed to be playing like a high school student.
Yeah.
And so everybody else around him is already an adult because for the bulk of the movie, they are going to be themselves 25 years later when they're actually adults. And so, but it still just like really plays weird off the top. And then after the very awkward, creepy shower scene, and I mean creepy and just like creepy for somebody to think that they needed that in the movie. Even though it did have some Bob Saget, it had shirtless
Bob Saget.
It had shirtless Bob Saget, and who's not here for that?
Apparently I was not there for it. It disturbed me a lot. I lost sleep over shirtless Bob Saget.
I didn't even
He was
notice
so
that was Bob
smooth.
Saget.
Oh man, it's Bob Saget. It's weird, but then right after that happens, they go outside, and they get outside, and then they just blare 50s music to make you go, "Oh, it's the 50s." But other than that, there had been no context to it, and it was just so strange. And then what's really weird to me is that, like, yeah, like even the kids in high school in the part of the movie that's high school are older than like even some of the adults playing the adults in the latter part of the movie. Like, this is just, I went through and checked some ages just because I was really curious about this, because it's like such a strange phenomenon in this movie, because like the time passage does have a lot to it, because the whole thing is, for this, for some reason, werewolves don't age, and that's the whole thing. But Adam Arkin was 25 years old when he made this movie, and he's supposed to be a ageless high school student. Joanne Nail, who plays Ricky, like the high school girl in the latter part of the movie, that's like his love interest. I don't know, I guess love interest, was 34 years old. Roz Kelly, who played Jane, his like love interest, and then the sheriff's wife and still love interest thing, was 39 years old when they made this movie. And Bill Kirchenbauer, who plays the sheriff, was 28. And so it's just like the ages of the actors are literally spreading like 15 years, and they're all like, it's just like, I didn't even check on Jim J. Bullock, but like, it's like everybody is like all over the place. None of it makes sense to me. Like, we spent last week, like we spent an hour and a half going through Wolf, and like had a lot of nice things and good things to say about Wolf, I thought, and a whole bunch of things. And like, I honestly, like, I feel like this week is just like, this movie's bad. See you next time.
Yeah. I mean, we could just end it there.
It would have been so much better. Like, one of the things you guys said yesterday in the chat thread was just like, this movie is so long, and it's not. It just feels like it takes forever.
I thought it was over 4 times.
And I admit, I was watching it, and towards the end of it, I just turned up the playback speed of this. I'm like, no, we're going to 125. This is not, I can't watch this at full speed any longer. I only have so much life in me, and I am not giving any more of it to this movie. Well, one thing I will say, I will applaud this movie because it tells you what it is right off the bat. Because as soon as that really good sound effect that you liked, Mike, is over, there's like, it goes right into, hey, just so you know, we're the kind of movie where all your gay characters are going to be like pedophile rapists. So if you're not down for that, like we told you in 20 seconds in. Yeah. And we don't let up once with our our overused tropes.
You don't take the foot off the gas at all. There's also like the first dialogue in the movie is a really weird thing where I think it's the Jane character, as he's being like carried off the field, the Jane character says something like, "I love your padding." And he says, "That's not padding," with a question mark. And I'm like, was that supposed to be a joke? Like, is that what, like, was that supposed to be funny? Is this the precedent we're setting to really start the movie off strong here? Was that,
yeah.
Was like, I just couldn't, like, it was just one of those things where like instantly I was like, oh my God. And then it was just, it gets into the Ed McMahon thing and the whole, like, you know, like, oh, that, like, you know, sorry you didn't have a mom. And he's like, oh, you mean that nice lady? He's like, no, that was the maid. And like makes the other joke about he was having an affair with the maid. And it's just, it's so strange. So strange.
Yeah. I did. So they fit in what? 1,200, 1,500 attempted jokes.
Yeah.
Did any get you?
No, I don't think I actually laughed once.
Okay. I, you know, maybe I'm ashamed, but I'll admit that I laughed twice.
You laughed twice?
I laughed twice.
Oh, Mike, I thought you were a comedian and had a sense of.
So part of it, and this probably wasn't on purpose, because there are 1,000 completely insane cuts. The second someone stops talking, they jump like 2 days into the future. They're like, the cut in the beginning when he's talking to his dad and they're standing in the living room talking about the mom. And he's like, I'm sorry you don't remember your mom. And then it cuts to them sitting halfway through dinner. And he says the next line of, but I'm going to make it up to you.
Yeah.
Like they, in silence, moved from the living room, made a full dinner, ate half of it, and then decided to jump in on that point. But this insane cut, which was when he goes into the bomb shelter and he shoots. And the bullet is ricocheting around and he is just dodging it.
Yeah.
And then like halfway through a dodge, there is a super abrupt cut to just a coffin with an American flag over it. That got me. I did laugh at that.
That's fair. That actually was, that was actually good. I also, and again, it's one of those, like, I don't even know if it was intentional, but in the cut, there's the part where like, after he's transformed into the werewolf and Ricky is like shockingly cool with it. There's the part where like she's talking to him and she's like rubbing his werewolf paw and it's really weird, but she says something like, you know, like we should probably keep seeing each other just so I can like help you control this. And then it smash cuts to him on a date with a 40-year-old woman.
Yeah.
And that was, I did find that funny of just like, oh wait, it's like later, it's the next day. Like, what is this? I feel like that's what I could, if I had more energy to put into it, I feel like a lot of my notes in this movie would just be, what is this?
I don't think that even the cast knew what kind of movie this was because it had a really uneven tone. Like there were times, and I was writing down, like, I don't know what I'm watching. Like, is this a spoof? Is this supposed to be like a Mel Brooks movie? Or is this supposed to be just like a straight comedy with a plot? And it bounced back and forth between those so often. And I feel like no one really delivered the lines like it was that kind of like Mel Brooks spoof thing, with the one exception of the woman in Romania who's like reading his palm. And by the way, if you're going to say someone has the mark of the pentagram on his palm, can we get a shot of that? I was just like, can we just like draw it out in pen and give me? I want to see it.
They showed us the palm. He did not have the mark.
And like at the end when but when I finally thought they were going to kind of pull that off, it was when Alan Arkin, who like, God love him for being in his son's movie. But when he falls after he's being shot and he like his hand is outstretched and they track along his hand and the hand rolls open and there's just a peanut.
Yeah.
It was just
that was a Citizen Kane.
I was expecting it to be the pentagram on his palm and it was just a peanut. But there was another part that actually did make me laugh that I forgot about. And it's at the very end. And I can't remember the actual wording of it, but it just cuts to Kenneth Mars, who plays Coach and then Principal Cleveland. And he says something along the lines of like, Tony Walker, you were a great football player and a passable wolf man. And like, that actually killed me. Like his delivery on that it's like, and we'll never forget you, even though we might try. And like, it was just like a weird little aside. And that actually got me. I did actually, I should amend it and apologize. I did actually laugh at that.
I don't want us to come off as this is like, oh, there's like a podcast where we spend the whole time saying, oh, this is the worst movie ever. This is stupid. Blah, 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 blah. Like this was really bad. But the one thing so I'm giving it credit for being open about what a bigot it is. And so not trying to hide that. And two, I'll give Alan Arkin, I wrote down Alan Arkin is a really good dad for doing this because you better get that man a Father's Day present every year. And it better be a good one because he came in and he tried. He doesn't just show up and just like not do a character, just kind of like say his lines and walk away. Like he gave a performance and it was as good as you were going to get in this movie. I don't think anyone was going to give us a better wolf psychiatrist than Alan Arkin gave us. Like he really worked for it.
Yeah, he chewed it up and really just like had fun with it. And it was just a level of craftsmanship that you didn't really get elsewhere in the movie. You know, and even Kenneth Mars, who generally was great in Young Frankenstein, as Inspector Kemp and stuff, he's generally like really good. And instead he's just playing this, like, we want you to play the high school football coach / principal who wants to fuck all your students. And then they bring in like Miss Montgomery and they're like, we want you to play this very mousy teacher who's constantly just being run over by everybody in your life. But then one guy who's a werewolf is nice to you. And then you just like go completely like vampy seductress and try to fuck all your students. They made trying to fuck students in a high school by teachers like a very common trope that they were just like, oh yeah, but this just happens. Like nobody made any weirdness of the whole, and everybody was like shockingly, like almost as shockingly chill as Ricky was with like the BDSM stuff, or just anybody when they see a werewolf. Like everybody was like really cool with a lot of stuff in this movie. Like that was the thing, is just like in order for this movie to happen, a lot of people had to be really cool with a lot of things.
Yeah,
this was the same high school from the Van Halen "Hot for Teacher" video, and they enforced the same rules, and it was just all right. It was the '80s; you could do what you want.
Yeah, it was just like everybody's like real cool with a lot of stuff. Like even the part during the dance where like Miss Montgomery walks into the dance and she's like taking off her glasses and let down her ponytail and put on a red dress, so she's hot now. That's the thing that we've established. But she's just like walks in and without any just like hint of secrecy, just like goes up to someone's like, "Where's this Tony kid?"
yeah.
And then when she can't find him, she's just like, "All right, you're gonna do." And like it was instantly that. And then right after, this is a thing I want to ask you guys, was like, was that a brick of marijuana?
Yeah,
Because it looked like a brick of marijuana. And then I'm like, I don't think you get marijuana in bricks like that.
It actually, like, it was definitely a brick of marijuana, but have you ever bought frozen spinach at the grocery store? They just give you that block of wilted spinach. I'm like, oh, that's what it is. You just went to the store, someone picked up a block of spinach, and like, that's it. We're a props department. Hey, we're knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, the props department went to Big Goods, got a bag of like frozen greens. Like, you know, they're getting ready. They're going to make some jigs after. It's going to be great. Oh, man. Yeah, there's just, yeah, what that was one of the things was just like, I have a couple, what like in my notes, it's just like back to back to back is that a brick of weed? This girl is shockingly chill with BDSM. People are shockingly chill with werewolves. There are bad transitions in this movie.
yeah.
Yeah, the transitions were all really bad. It just seemed like a bunch of scenes. It like wasn't any continuity to the story. It's like, here's a bunch of scenes that we thought would be funny, and we put them together for you. What do you think? And I'm kind of shocked anyone released this. This was,
yeah, it was. I mean, one of the other things with this one was like there was a bunch of really weird, like there was a lot of ADR jokes. It's like where they went, okay, maybe this movie isn't as like, let's just devil's advocate. Maybe this movie isn't as funny as we think it is. So what we should do, we're going to bring Adam Arkin back. And we're going to get him to just say a bunch of things that also aren't funny. And then we're just going to pepper them in throughout the movie. And then that's going to be like, I don't like, there's just so many, just like mid transformation, he would just make like weird dog jokes and just like weird things. And it was clearly like his mouth wasn't moving. It was clearly just dropped in over the top of everything else. And it was just so very strange.
See, my theory behind that is not that they didn't think it was funny enough, but that they were like, oh my God, we left 3 seconds of silence in this area. That won't do. We have to run the camera right up until the second that someone finishes a thought so that we can cut away. We cannot have a silent cut.
Well, it's like it's the reason I sleep with the TV on. You don't want to leave anybody alone with their thoughts in this thing, because then you realize just how bad everything is.
Yeah.
Like if there's silence, then I can have my own thing of just stepping back and going, hang on now. I'm not sure this movie's good.
Yeah. If you were stuck in a mudslide that was dragging you to hell and it stopped for a second, you'd get out of the mudslide. And that is the same reason that they had to just continuously make this movie relentlessly for an hour and a half.
That is the best description of this movie.
The line that got me the most, the one that hit me in my very heart and soul, was when he's standing over his dad's grave and he says, "You're lucky being able to die." And I was like, yes, you are. If only I could be so lucky right now.
Krusty the Clown. I think the living would envy the dead. Yes, yes. Those of us who have seen this, yes.
I also found it really funny that like at there was a whole bunch with that funeral, and I just had the note of, this is a weird funeral. But the thing where his friend gets so mad at him, he's like, your dad just shot himself, is what, you know, he went to a bomb shelter and he shot himself, and now we're at his funeral and you're distraught about this. and you are going to quit high school and just like because you're like it's that thing of like it's a big thing to go through, and like let me just back up and say in my version of this conversation, both people are somewhat reasonable. Sorry, that's the premise you might have to buy into regarding the dialogue in this movie for a second. Should both people be considered reasonable? Here's the thing, that the guy's dad dies in a horrific accident. It is his fault. Not everybody knows this. He knows he's a werewolf, and he goes, you know what? I got to get out of here. I got to quit school. I got to take off. I got to whatever. And instead, his buddy's like, you mean you're going to leave before the big game? And then almost gets into I think he grabs him at one point, and like I'm like, you are literally like, the priest is still talking at this funeral, and you are 3 feet away from him.
The priest is making weird noises over there.
Yeah, the priest is doing a bunch of weird stuff, sure. But yeah, like the priest is making some weird noises. Things are happening. It's very strange. Everything in is very strange. But yeah, it's just like it seems like a weird point to get really mad about that. But then 25 years later, or however long, 21 years, I think is what he says. Which is another note I have as to why I know it's exactly 21 years. Is that when he comes back and he like goes into the house to be like, hey, you shouldn't be in here. Like, you're trespassing. And it turns around, it's the guy. Like, there's that big reveal that it's the same guy. It's like his friend who told him off at the graveside. And it's just like, yeah, for how just how dreamy they make that moment, and the reveal that like, look, that was a wig the whole time. Are you guys shocked? Like, oh man.
I want to ask about something that I think we're going to talk about with all of these movies. I was thinking about this because you just said the big reveal. So the reveal scene, like when the werewolf kind of realizes that they're a werewolf. I think this is going to be a scene in every one. So in the last one, we all really liked the Jack Nicholson wolf reveal, where he's in the office, he's doing his editing. He realizes that he can hear things on other sides of the building. And I think we all kind of really liked that. Yeah, I feel like this movie had the same scene, but he just kind of wanders into the bathroom in Romania, and he's like, oh, I was eaten by a wolf, but I have no visible wounds on me. And then his dad's in the shower and comes out on him because that was weird. But what did we think about the whole reveal?
I would have, I forgot about it until you just mentioned it.
I remember it.
That's my takeaway from that reveal, is like, it was such a non-thing that like, yeah, until you mentioned that, like, I wouldn't have been able to pinpoint when in this movie that moment happened. Like, I kind of just went, oh, right. And he cuts himself with the razor.
Yeah.
And Ed McMahon jumps out of the shower, and it was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. I guess that is the reveal scene. I did think it was just the whole idea of, oh, we saved a bundle on special effects makeup by never showing any blood.
Yeah.
Or wounds of any kind, just having him crawl through the streets while monologuing.
Yeah.
For so long until he gets to that bathroom.
Yeah.
And then the razor on the face really confused me, where he's like, why? I'm going to cut myself to see if the cut goes away, but only just a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to be like, no. I don't want to do that.
No, I'm not committing to this.
Yeah.
As someone who shaves with a safety razor, like the razor blade in the single razor blade kind, like he used in the movie, you would not do that. That would hurt so much.
Yeah, it's and like doesn't even say like, oh, that hurts a bit. Like something like that.
Okay, cut your nails a little close and make it bleed. Like, there are options.
Yeah. I mean, it's another one of those things where it's just, I think every scene in this movie is the same thing, where there is a scene from a werewolf movie in a lot of the scenes of this movie. You know what I mean? Like, there are werewolf tropes, like the discovering your transformation, the attack, the first kill, but they also cram in so much weird stuff into those scenes. Like the first, when he gets attacked, is completely overshadowed by the fact that he is far more terrified of a violin than he is of the werewolf. The werewolf sounds being jaguar sounds, like, and then going home, realizing you're a werewolf is like, oh yeah, so that's a moment. We see him looking at his scars that should be there, but they're not. Ooh, weird. He's got, oh my God, the dad is shoving microfilm up his ass and he's surprising him from the shower.
And then he waddles off.
And then the first kill or the first like attacks when he goes on his spree is completely overshadowed by these weird, the newspaper clippings that imply that he's just running around biting people on the butt.
Yeah. And
they call him the nibbler or the nipper. It was like the midnight nipper bothers New Yorkers.
Yeah, it says at one point, werewolf annoys community.
Yeah. Which is a great thing to think about when they first released the movie of that is, you know, what the theater was. That's the headline for the theater is werewolf annoying community.
Yeah, that's like,
I think werewolf annoys community was a pretty good joke. It just landed so flat because it had followed all of the other things that had also fallen flat. Like you weren't going to win me back half an hour in.
Yeah, with
or it would have been
annoys community. But yeah, just the fact that like everything is just a mild inconvenience in the movie with the werewolfism. Right down to like that's kind of the punchline at the end too, is like he just kind of like wakes up after he's been killed, and it's just like, yeah, like nothing in this movie sticks. You know, like it's like all the stakes are really low. The werewolf just annoys people. Even when he's shot with a bunch of silver bullets, they make an inflation joke. You know, like
I almost threw up.
Like it's just so much just weird in all these things, and like, yeah, we
actually jumped over the first attack because the first attack was the one on the plane, which was a super questionable scene in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
But I wrote down at that point, it's like, wow, like casting decision. This is the first time we're seeing black people in the movie. And they're like, the only two black people are terrorists. But then we jump ahead 20 years, and now they're at like a derelict high school, and everyone's bad. And now there's black people as far as the eye can see. So I was like, you know, this is a product of its time, I guess. And I'm not forgiving it, but man, this is the kind of movie you hold up to be like, hey, remember problematic movies? This is example A.
Yeah, I think that's I like that's very much I think the case is like this is we're talking just movies that like jokes that people thought were acceptable that just like aren't really, like shouldn't have been. They were.
No.
Now they're just bad, you know. And it's just there's a lot of, you know, and even like there's a lot of sexual assault jokes in this movie.
Yeah.
Like a whole bunch, and it's just like one of those very uncomfortable things where it's like, okay, I get that 40 years ago when this movie was made, people were like, we can make a joke of this, and it's just like you really shouldn't. And now you watch it and you're just like, you really shouldn't have. And it's just a little bit, especially again with like all the stuff with like Miss Montgomery, the teacher, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to just like, this is like, I don't think that the picking apart that portion of this movie is the podcast we want this to be.
No, that would take too long.
It would
to say they did a horrible, terrible job, and I hate them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like, let's get back to the simpler things that are bad about this movie. I find it really weird that he keeps this like shitty satin school jacket on for 20 odd years. Like everywhere he goes as he's like hiding out and on the run, he's wearing like a bright yellow full moon high school jacket. And as he's a werewolf who annoys communities, like it's never a thing of just like, was there anything recognizable about this guy? It's like, well, he was Adam Arkin, and also he was wearing a bright yellow jacket with a full smiling full moon on the back of it.
It's like, did he say anything that you remember? It's like, well, he growled a bunch and then he bit my butt and said, rump roast, ran away. So,
I hated those jackets. Those were the jackets from a high school production of Grease. Those were so ugly.
Yeah, like they're not even like actual Letterman jackets that they would have like had in the 50s or whatever, but it was just like it was just like this weird satin jacket. Like if it was a nice Letterman jacket, I get hanging out of that. But no, this was like a shitty satin jacket that, again, it's just like the low rent version of like a low rent production of Grease. Like it was just bad.
So I have a question.
Okay.
One thing I was thinking through the entire movie is what is Josh going to cherry pick from this to put in our movie?
Yes.
Well, actually, I asked you guys the question about the reveal scene, and what I took away was, wow, Josh, you need to do a better reveal scene, because in our werewolf movie right now, there is a scene where the werewolf is in a bathroom going, oh no, like, where are my, or realizing he has no wounds. And I was triggered. I said, oh, well, that's coming right out, and we're replacing it with something. I don't know what I would
all we need to
take
do
for this,
is
though.
add another character bursting out of the shower with microfilm up their ass, right?
Yeah. Just like,
Thankfully, we don't have that yet.
yeah, yet. Yeah, I mean, and there's not even stuff that I'd be like, hey, Josh, we should, do this. Like, yeah, like there's no big takeaways that are positive from this movie. And I'm trying to find them, like I often say I love werewolf movies despite werewolf movies. And this is a good example of that. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm still thinking what could be a good.
Did you have one, Mike?
So there was one. I did say there were two moments that I laughed in the movie. The first one was the jump cut to the coffin after the ricocheting bullet. The other one is, so throughout this whole movie, the big thing that has to happen is the big game. He misses the first big game. He has another chance to have another big game, which might lift the curse. Maybe, I think.
That's kind of what they're saying, yeah.
But he doesn't have to win. He just has to score a touchdown, is what he's saying by the end. But in the beginning, it really seems like he has to win the big game against Simpson. It says beat Simpson on the school. He's like, there's still time. I can beat Simpson. I can save the school as a werewolf. And I was like, so this whole movie is leading up to this final big game. Everybody's there. Simpson is up 47-0. And I'm like, all right, well, at some point, this werewolf is going to come in, join the team, redeem his reputation, beat Simpson.
Yeah.
That's what this whole movie has been leading up to. And the other reason that I laughed is because he hits the field as a werewolf and people react for the first time in the movie like he's a werewolf. So he hits the field and doesn't score a touchdown because he's good at football now because he's a wolf, but because everyone is scrambling away from him screaming. Yeah. And I thought, like, the only thing that I actually really liked was that they actually treated him like a werewolf in the football scene. So it's him, like, running a touchdown and eating the ball and being a lunatic. But everybody is just scrambling out of the way and screaming and shooting at him and not paying attention to the game at all. Like, they don't celebrate the touchdown.
That is yeah.
And it didn't hit home as an actual on-purpose joke because it was so chaotic, and they did like 25 cutaways to people saying absolute doo-doo nonsense on the sidelines. But that was one thing that I think if it had been handled right, could have been like a really, really funny moment.
Yeah. Was anyone else disappointed that the werewolf lived? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of disappointed with a lot of things in this movie, and that's one of them. I was also disappointed that Alan Arkin died, because I really enjoyed that character, honestly. Like, I thought as a straight man that comes in the third act to just, kind of, and it's blatantly just like, we're gonna bring this guy in. He's gonna be the somewhat voice of reason, but still really weird in the movie. But it's just, I love Alan Arkin in anything. He's just fantastic, and he was
the scene on top of the building where he's talking. There's the fire department trying to get a guy who's about to jump off the building, and they both end up like wrestling with each other and falling off together. Sorry to spoil that for anyone who is not at that point in the movie yet. I thought that was as close as this movie got to doing what it wanted to do. I was like, I could buy this in like a Mel Brooks kind of movie. This just this scene.
Yeah.
But I mean, up until then, I remember there's the first moment I realized what this movie was trying to do, that it was trying to be kind of Mel Brooks, was when he's bitten by the werewolf and there's someone following him with a violin.
Yeah. Which is very young at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really feel like they really had to work to not have the Romanian woman say the werewolf there wolf joke from Young Frankenstein. Like it was just, the whole scene is trying to dance around that joke. But like I didn't also get the violin. Like, why does the violin keep coming back just sort of randomly, like inconsistently when he's a werewolf?
I think it actually is a Young Frankenstein bit, isn't it? Like, isn't there a thing in Young Frankenstein with the violin? Yeah. And I think it's just a rip of that. I think it's honestly just like trying to homage that and just doing a poor job of it. Just to
but they do it so many times.
Oh, I know. You like, Josh, you're saying as though other parts of this movie show restraint.
Sorry.
And then so Alan Arkin also hears the violin and tips the violin player at one point.
Yeah,
and I was like, that's a cool way to show that Alan Arkin is a vampire or a werewolf now, right? Because he can hear the violin, he can see the violin player. He is now an actual werewolf. But then no, he's dead. He has a peanut in his hand.
Yeah,
a lot of almosts in this movie.
Yeah. There's a lot of almost, like there's a lot of just like it could have just been stuff in this movie for sure. But
they shot the first
draft. I got another thing that I actually like in this movie. And I don't actually like it, but I think it's something that we could work from. Because I really enjoy, and there's other werewolf movies it's in, and in this one, it almost does it well. Which again, it's a big almost. Is the Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita as the silversmith scene where I keep trying to say Reggie because like Bill Kirchenbauer reminds me so much of Reggie from Phantasm.
Yeah,
but when Flynn, Jack, whatever the fuck that guy's name is, when he goes into the silversmith and is like trying to like get a silver bullets cast, and they just kind of have like a fun, like what in many other movies with other writing would be funny banter, but in this is just like awkward and like, are they trying to make jokes or not? That I love that scene. I think there have been versions of our movie that I think that's like the only thing that you kept from my draft originally, Josh, was like the scene where like somebody's trying to get bullets cast and they have like an interaction with the silversmith, or at least I think you kept the joke that I had in the dialogue from that.
I kept the joke. That scene is gone, but there is still a scene where they're scrambling to gather up their silver. That still exists in there.
Yeah, but there's like there's a joke. There's like that kind of thing, like that interaction of just somebody just very dryly being like, yeah, this is my business, like I'll deal with what we need, right? Like yeah it's I do enjoy that, but again, I think this movie just did it badly. Like it almost was good and it wasn't. And then you had Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi, he's great in everything, not in this.
I will say that when that scene started, I was like, oh God, no, don't bring in an Asian character, because I've seen what you've done with your gay characters, with black characters. I thought this was just going to be insane. They showed a little restraint with this, and maybe it was just because they had some reverence for the actor, but I was like, okay, we kind of got out of that with our jaws still not on the floor. So that's a bit of a win. Good job, Full Moon High.
I think that might be the first time anybody's ever said "good job, Full Moon High."
Yeah, I'm not saying
that should be the title of this episode, I guess. Good job, Full Moon High.
No. I think that's kind of it for my notes. Like I've got the only other thing that I think we haven't talked about. No, like that's. Yeah, I've gone through all of these things. I asked why wolves sound like cats. I mentioned the nuanced time lapse, where it just shows a bunch of clocks and then pictures of presidents being like treated with like varying degrees of respect as well. Like they break the Nixon picture, they just like have Jimmy Carter's like on its side and just like pop it off the wall. There's that whole thing. And then other things,
Gerald Ford falling off the wall, I was like, okay, that's pretty good. And then they end on Shirley Chisholm, and I was like, okay, in any other movie I feel like that would have been kind of like a but in this one I'm like, it's like I don't think you're making the joke for the reason I want you to be making the joke.
Yeah, like they're like the joke they're making is that like Shirley Chisholm is who follows who follows Jimmy Carter, and like, but it just feels like, and it's so weird because like so much of this movie has like that Cold War Americana thing about it, and like just trying to do the whole good old days kind of thing, and it's very weird that way, and so that really felt more backhanded than anything else, I think. But the only other two notes that I have that I haven't really brought up are that the Jack and Jane family dynamic is not cool. Like, she is so contentious, openly contentious of her husband. They are both so openly contentious of their son. There's just a whole, then they like try to have sex on the couch, and he comes in and makes a joke and runs away, and they throw things at him. It's all very weird. And she's just really into the idea of cheating on her husband. And it's like, the whole thing is just very strange. And I just like, it's one of those, it just makes you uncomfortable more than anything else kind of moments.
I'm remembering that scene now, and I feel nauseous in the way that when you remember a dream while you're really sick.
Yeah.
You know, those dreams, and like they're almost reality, but they're just too weird to, because they go from like, she's saying, "Oh, I can't wait to go sleep with this kid who looks like Tony, who I know is Tony."
Yeah.
And then he just growls and tackles her onto the couch, and then they're enthusiastically about to have sex. And then the sun and their outfits and the set design in all of the houses is so crazy.
And also, like, isn't that shot basically a oneer? Like, I feel like that entire scene is shot in a wide master, and like it never cuts in on anything ever. That whole thing just plays out as a weird, like, high angle, diagonally shot master where everybody just runs in and out of frame. Like, it just feels very, that whole thing is super weird. Yeah, but yeah, like, and he's constantly making cracks at his son for eating in the living room, and then the son comes in and makes a joke about having sex on the couch, and it's just like, what is this?
I think I'm actually thinking back now. I think every scene with the sheriff in it makes me feel sick. There's something about him that like warps my idea of reality. It's so weird. When he's in the school and they're watching the film, the BDSM film.
Oh yeah,
he's like, I'm gonna tell the world that I am a werewolf so that I will go to jail and they'll stop me from biting any more butts.
Yeah,
I can't do this anymore. I don't want to bite any more butts. So I'm gonna film it. And he's sitting there watching it, and he's smiling, and he's like, wow, this is cool. Whoa, what a film. Look at this.
Yeah.
This looks like a porno, is like saying all those things. And then he has the line when he's taking him out. I wrote this down. I don't know why, but he's taking him out. He puts him in handcuffs. He's like, yeah, good idea. Put my hands behind my back. Don't trust me. I can't do anything. And it's like, all right, I got to get this guy out of here. I have to take him in before everyone gets sick and barfs, and then I get sick and barf, is what he says while he's taking him out.
Yeah.
And there's something, I don't know what it is about this man, but I have to lie down after this. Like, I feel nauseous.
Yeah, there's also right after that too is the thing where like all the dudes in class suddenly start paying attention to Ricky after they see her in this video, and then she gets really excited about that and asks for a copy of the reel. That's super strange to me, like the way that whole thing goes. It's just like, it's that is very, very odd. But the other thing I had a note about, and this is the I already mentioned the mash effect of like the weird hairstyles, and how 70s and 80s haircuts not being done makes you kind of, because like for years, and the reason I call it the mash effect is that I always thought mash took place in Vietnam when I was a kid, because they looked like people in the 70s. So I assumed that it took place in the 70s, and then someone eventually, like, I eventually realized it was Korea and it was supposed to be the 50s. And I'm like, well, why is all their hair shaggy? They are in the army in the 50s. Like, those are both reasons to have very, like, you know, high and tight crew cuts. Like, but it always just kind of throws off my interpretation of time when I'm watching a movie. But I noticed like it's always a thing throughout movies in the 70s, is that hair is always longer than you're led to believe it was in the 50s. It's just strange. Whatever reason, they don't want to give anybody a haircut. It's weird. But there's also the Jack Tripper effect that takes place in this movie too, where you have a guy who at every turn seems to be avoiding sexual encounters with beautiful women, but is still basically talking as though he's like very, very horny and in desperate need of having a sexual release. So it's like, you know, he's avoiding the his high school girlfriend who he talks about like they talk about having sex a lot, but whenever you see them interacting, he's trying to avoid her. And then he's with Ricky and they're like literally like in the woods and stuff. And she's asking him how long it's been. And he can like tell you to the minute how long it's been since he's had sex, but he's been avoiding sex at all costs. And it's like just a weird thing to me. It's like a weird trope in a lot of stuff, but it always reminds me of Jack Tripper, who was like a total horn dog throughout all of Three's Company. But like when that like really attractive lady upstairs was trying to get with him all the time, he's like, no, stay away from me, beautiful woman who wants to sleep with me. Let me, like, it's just the weirdest thing to me. And it's just this really weird effect and trope in a lot of movies, especially like in the 80s where they're trying to like, I don't know, like it was some like weird like morality paradox of like, you know, they want to try to make it as though like I don't like, I honestly just don't know what it is. Like I just can't makes no sense.
Jack had to maintain, because Jack was trying to pretend to be gay through Three's Company because like he was trying to, otherwise Mr. Roper would kick him out of the apartment. This guy was just, I mean, that was kind of like a passable excuse, or like that's what it is in the story. This guy, there was no reason for him, I guess. Yeah, I'm trying to be forgiving, but like there was no reason for anything in this. It was just a bunch of just scenes that some of the characters held throughout.
It's important enough to them that they put it in the log line. Like in the log line of the movie, it says during this time he is avoiding sexual advances from his girlfriend because it's his time of the month. And he like they love that joke so much, which they make like at the beginning under the bleachers extremely quickly right before an insanely abrupt cut. But they like that joke enough that they put it in the log line, and that's the only thing that they're like, no, we are holding true to this the entire movie. He does not want to have sex. He is not horny like the wolf.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is that like the horny like the wolf thing is going to kill me every week. The other thing about that is like it's called Full Moon High. They do so many like full moon things, but at the same time, like it never shows you the downtime. According to this movie, there is a full moon 364 nights a year.
Yeah.
Like like, you know, they make the time of the month joke, but that time of the month is 30 days a month. It's like, it's just, again, like, you know, the problem with this movie really comes down to a lot of things involving restraint. And, you know, there's just overall, there's just, they just can't really hold back in any way. So like even the downtime of like in the 21 years, 3 months and 14 days, he's been wandering since he last had sex with Jane, apparently. And I also don't know why I remember that exactly, but that's what it was. But in that time that he's been like wandering around, like there's never downtime. Like he's always just a wolf. He's always just turning into a wolf and biting people on the ass. Like it's just, and I guess bums are funny is what their whole takeaway there is like, oh, we'll have them like bite people on the bums. That's a good joke.
Bums are funny. I'll give them that. Bums are very funny. They are a funny part of the body. But
where the poop comes out.
Right. Where the poop comes out. I forgot about the poop.
In our first episode, I said that I'm surprised that there aren't a lot more werewolf movies because we kind of all know exactly what werewolves do. And I think werewolves movies work the best when they kind of just let the werewolves do their thing. Like you don't need to set up why all this is happening. It's like, I can get why a werewolf is a werewolf. But in this one, they color outside the lines way too much because the werewolf is always a werewolf. And he bites people, or sorry, he becomes a werewolf because he was bitten by a werewolf, but then he bites other people on the bum, but that doesn't make them werewolves. And it's just, you're making too many rules. Just calm down, simplify. And like, just let him be a werewolf.
And making too many amendments to those rules too, as you're going through the movie. And it's just, it's, And I mean, like I also, and I know this from another thing me and Mike have been working on, another project that involves supernatural creatures and how they age. Like I don't know that just like, oh, werewolves don't age is a thing that you need in this. Like, you know, I get it's like what they were trying to tell the movie. Like, you know, this movie needs it because it's the whole premise is that the guy from the 50s is now a teen wolf in the 80s. But like I don't like. I think there's a better way to do that for sure. I think there's better ways to do most things in this movie, but you know, I even like the idea that it's not like they haven't aged at all. It's that they've aged less because during the time of the month where they're like where they're a wolf or are closer to being a wolf, that it has an effect on like metabolism and stuff. Like I like those kinds of tweaks. Is the idea that the like kind of the idea of like the science behind supernatural magic and like ways to kind of justify certain things. Like I like those approaches and stuff. So like, yeah, but at the same time, this movie just needed him to not age for 20 odd years while everybody around him changed. And then he changes, and it's like, yeah, the director, Larry Cohen, tried to make a very deep statement about this movie one time. He was asked about what the movie was about, or I don't know, something, who knows. I don't know what he was actually like talked about, but director Larry Cohen has said of this movie, it's more than a comedy. It has some interesting ideas about how life in America has changed sexually and politically since the early 60s. All of Arkin's friends have changed, but he hasn't. And whereas he changes into a werewolf all the time, his friends change into middle-aged people while he's gone, with different values and different ideas. They change as much as he does, actually. And so, like, that's a theme that the director thought this movie was exploring.
A
They
rebuttal.
change as much as he does
No.
is true, because none of them change at all.
Yeah.
Nobody changed. They look different a little bit. They have
Like,
different
when
hair.
he goes out to dinner with him that night, she even puts her hair back to the way it was.
Yeah.
Like in those weird pigtails and stuff.
Yeah.
Their values have changed. They have not. They have not at all. No. They're all completely.
All anybody cares about is the big game.
Yeah.
All
they care about is the big game and fucking Tony.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and like what's weird too, like he shows up and like everybody just kind of like stops when this guy shows up, and I'm like, Adam Arkin's good looking dude. He's not that good looking. He's not stop everybody in their tracks. Like, who's this? But it's also the thing of like when he's in the classroom, they're getting ready to show the sex ed tape. And he yeah, like the tape, and he brings in the film canister of the change and stuff. And everybody's like, hey, Tony's here. What's up, Tony? Good to see you, Tony. Like everybody's making that. And it's just kind of like, why is he suddenly like the most popular guy in school and all these things? Like it's very strange. I think I don't really have that much more to say about this movie, and we should just get to the checklist and get this over with.
Yeah, do the poem.
No, I'm going to jump to the checklist first. The checklist is this guy the protagonist or antagonist of the movie? Actually, no. I'm just going to go to the poem because like that's all this movie needs is even a man. Yeah, sure. Who is pure of heart. Are they a good person? I don't think that he's necessarily that great. Like he's not a bad guy, but there is nothing outstanding about this person's character.
I will say that after he's become, I guess he's supposed to be at least 37. And when he's 37 and he comes back and definitely has sex with a high school student, then I'm going to say, no, not pure of heart in the least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it says his prayers by night. Is there religious subtext? There's not religious subtext, but there's weird, like American, the religion of America, kind of stuff for sure. May become a wolf. Yes, there's a physical transformation into a wolf. When the wolfbane blooms, folklore is integrated. I should say it's there's the gypsy thing. There's he's bitten. It's like they obviously are playing up the whole he's in Transylvania, Romania thing and all that kind of stuff. And the moon is full and bright. Yes, the full moon has effect on this movie. It's called Full Moon High. The moon is always full. That is the big way of this movie. So that's how it fits into our poem here. Yeah, this movie is not ideal. It's good in the sense that you guys asked me specifically for a movie that was not as good as Wolf and was made in a different time period, and so it wasn't like a contemporary to Wolf. It was from a different era of filmmaking and things were slightly different. It also checks that box. So I think I did exactly what you guys asked for by providing Full Moon High as episode 2 of our podcast.
Yeah, you have proven yourself to be a true monkey's paw.
But you get a free Frogurt. The Frogurt is also cursed. All right. Is there anything else you guys have about Full Moon High from 1981?
No, it's not even so bad that it's becomes funny to watch again. It doesn't even have that kind of quality. It was just a slog to get through.
It was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do.
I feel like as much as it's great the way Alan Arkin shows up in the third act, I feel like I could watch from the point he shows up again. Like I could watch his performance in this movie again just because it is so just bonkers, and he's just like helping out we'll let your son be in this movie if you show up for the third act kind of vibe that I got from this. His other kid is in it too. His other son, who's like the younger brother of Adam Arkin, Anthony Arkin, I believe his name is actually the kid who at the end is just like, I hate psychiatrists. I'm never going back. And like it says something like that when at the end of the movie. That's the other Arkin son. So all the Arkins it's a big family affair for the Arkins.
All World's Greatest Dads mugs need to be amended so that it says World's Greatest Dad and then underneath, like next to Alan Arkin, because what a sacrifice that man made.
Yeah. What way to take a bullet for the family on this one. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say about Full Moon High. I can't. I don't ever want to have anything else to say about. I don't really want to give this movie any more real estate in my head.
No.
I'm kind of surprised you're still wearing the shirt.
Well, it's still a good shirt. On that, I guess we'll take off. Is there anything else outside of Full Moon High you guys want to add? Anything going on that people need to know about or anything like that?
Yeah, you can always check out the D&D podcast that I'm working on, Wonders and Blunders, on any podcast app that you're looking for. We're just finishing up season 1 within the next few episodes. So if you're into that nerd crap, come check us out.
All right. And Josh, anything from you?
I don't have anything this week, but I have something I keep kicking it down the can because I don't know when I can say anything, but soon I'll have something to say. And I like that I have a little Chiron underneath. I don't know if that's my Instagram or my Twitter. I'll have to follow me to see what that is.
I think that's your Twitter. Because I think it's Josh
look at that. I have Twitter
and Josh on Instagram. I think is the way it goes. But and that's the same thing. I have Mike's Twitter, so they're all the Twitter ones. Mine's the same across the way. But yeah, I got a couple things. I got a movie. I'm getting ready to shoot, and there's some stuff coming for that. So keep an eye out. There may or may not be a store that comes out of that, which will be fun. And we'll be selling some T-shirts and stickers and all kinds of fun stuff with some really.
The merch looks really good, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, you probably only saw a hat so far. Our producer has a hat. My hat is due like tomorrow. It's supposed to be delivered, and then like there's a bunch of really great artwork that Tara Fleming did for the movie. It's called That Halloween, and so we go to camera in a couple months, and yeah, Tara did some fantastic artwork for it, and we're gonna put that artwork on a bunch of stuff and sell it so people can hopefully buy it, and then it just kind of helps our financial structure of the movie and helps us do some more fun things. And it just seems like a better way to do it than like a Kickstarter or something. It just because Kickstarters for short films don't really accomplish anything.
So one of these episodes, you're going to turn it on and if you look at the YouTube video, all of us are just going to be decked out
in like that Halloween merch, 100%. Yeah. Otherwise it's just fun. Yeah, you can follow That Halloween on it's on Instagram. We just set up a new Instagram and that's where you're going to start seeing some of the clothes stuff pop up probably. We have a Twitter for it, but we haven't. It's also at That Halloween, but it was a Twitter account that was set up for it years ago, and nothing's really happened on it since. There hasn't been a lot of movement, but cast and crew announcements and all that stuff is going to start dropping very soon as we kind of ramp into production on this thing. So there's lots on that front coming out. And of course, Terror Nova, where Lunacy, Josh's story based on a scene in the book, or a scene in the movie, sorry, is available from Engine Books. You can find it on like Amazon, a couple spots around town, a whole bunch of things like that. So keep an eye out for Terror Nova. And I wrote a bunch of that book too. So there's a bunch of stuff there. But that's the stuff from me. Otherwise, guys, we'll be back, I guess, next week. We'll pick a movie. We'll announce it on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. And you can watch it if you want to. In this case, we don't recommend it.
It is free on YouTube if you want to watch it, but don't do it.
Yeah, like if you're on YouTube watching this or just like using a podcast app, but like, yeah, that's on YouTube. You can type it in and find it. And don't though.
And don't. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing we're saying. But until next time, guys, thanks so much for checking us out. We've been that's Lunacy, and we'll be back next week with another werewolf movie to talk about. Bye.
Bye.
Arr.